Good afternoon and welcome to today's Tiger webinar. This series is a benefit for RIT alumni and an important part of keeping you moving forward in your professional and personal development. I'm Lydia Palmer, Senior Director of Marketing and Communications in RIT's Division of Development and Alumni Relations, and I am your moderator for today's webinar. Before we begin, let's take a moment to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the presentation tools. All participants in today's webinar have joined in mute mode and cannot be heard during the presentation. However, we absolutely encourage participation. To submit your questions at any time, please enter them in the chat box. The chat box can be opened by clicking on the chat tab at the right of your webinar window. We will make every effort to address all your comments and questions throughout the webinar. You are joining today's webinar using broadcast audio. If for any reason you wish to dial in by phone, dial-in information is provided in the chat box. Live captioning is also being provided during the webinar, and you can find the link to access that in the chat box as well. Note that today's webinar will be recorded and made available, complete with captions, in approximately 1 week following today's event. All participants will receive an email with the link to the recording. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box as well, and we will do our best to get you the appropriate answers. And with that, let's get started. Today's webinar is Entrepreneurship in the Music Industry, How to Start Your Career in Music After College. We are joined by Aaron Spieldenner, producer, video game composer, and sound designer for LA-based company Bad Dream Games. Aaron is the creator of the award-winning indie title One Hand Clapping and is a syndicated producer for ReelWorld Productions, an international radio jingle production company. He is also a composer and recording engineer for Hazy Bay Studio in Seattle, where he's been since 2017. Aaron has worked with artists ranging stylistically from singer-songwriter to alt-country to rock and punk. He has also worked with a variety of clients to create compelling music and sound design for video games, film, commercials, and radio. Aaron graduated from Berklee College of Music in 2017 with a degree in film scoring and a minor in video game scoring. Aaron, welcome to RIT's Tiger webinars, and our audience is all yours.
Thanks, Lydia. Hey, everybody. This is my first time doing a webinar, so I can't see anybody out there, but I guess I'll just introduce myself here. My name's Aaron. My presentation today is going to be focused primarily on how you make the transition from studying music in school to doing it full-time outside of school, and kind of what you can expect when you're starting to make that transition. Also, just wanted to clarify, I'm not the creator of that video game. I'm the audio person for that video game. I make all the music and I make all the sound design. I've been doing that for almost 4 years now, but I have a lot of respect for the people that are developing the game. They're very, very high level people. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. So I put a poll into the chat window here, just to kind of get an idea of where everybody's from and what everybody wants to do, so that I can kind of shift what I'm talking about a little bit. I see some. Oh, yeah, hey Lydia, I just saw you posting the thing.
I'm in Rochester.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to answer that, go ahead. I know that some of you are potentially in like classrooms, so if you want to just take a second to find out where people are from, or where people are planning to move, and what industry they kind of want to work in, you could go ahead and put that into the chat box if that's easier. If you're just sitting in front of your computer and want to participate by clicking in the poll, feel free to do that as well. So with that in mind, let's get started. So did the slide change for you, Lydia?
Yes.
I assume it's good. Okay, cool. All right. So obviously there are lots of ways to start a career in the music industry, mostly because the music industry isn't really a traditional career path. Oftentimes people fall into it in unusual ways. I've heard lots of stories of somebody just has a friend who needed them to do something, and it turns out that that friend is, the lead developer for Halo, or like, there's all kinds of things that you just have no idea who you're going to meet or what's going to happen. And my, oh, Great Falls. Awesome. Sweet. Thanks, John. There's lots of different ways to get involved in music, obviously. And when I was in school, I was studying film scoring in particular. And the path for somebody who wants to do film scoring, the most like traditional path, it seems like, or the most ascribed path, is you go move to LA and you try to find an assistant position with a composer, and just keep chipping away at that until opportunities come along. I'm going to kind of go over later in this that my path was less conventional than that. I've always been kind of more entrepreneurial anyways, and I wanted to pursue something like that. And I also had some reasons for moving not to LA and not to New York or some other big music city. So I'm going to kind of talk about that a bit, but I can also touch on, if there are some people here that are thinking about moving to LA or thinking about moving to New York or any other big music city, I can also talk about that and what my colleagues did when they decided to move to those cities. It takes time to build a career in music, especially after college, but I think anytime you want to get started in music, it does take time. So I'll talk about what I did during that time, kind of how long it took me, and how I got to a point where I could be working full time in music. So what do I do for work? I do a number of things, just like most entrepreneurial people in the music industry. From what I hear from people that I talk to, that people are kind of doing all sorts of different things. Some people I know, they'll do lots of multimedia things, like they'll learn how to use a camera and get Premiere Pro and shoot commercial videos for local clients or do something of that nature. Other people will do some sort of entrepreneurial thing with a web presence, like a YouTube channel or something like that. All while they're doing, something music related as well, or maybe they make their own videos and then they write the music for their videos, or they do, something like that. Luckily, I've gotten to a point where all of my things are music related, which was my goal when I was graduating from college. And it really boils down to three major things that I do. The first is I co-own a recording studio in Seattle with two business partners called Hazy Bay Music. We do a lot of different things. I put the link in the end of the slideshow, so you guys can check out our website if you're curious about that. But we do things ranging from working with artists and bands. Like we'll record bands. They'll come and book a day or book a weekend or whatever, and come and record their EP or record their album. I also get the privilege to work one-on-one with artists. I do singer-songwriter music, so a lot of the musicians that I know in Seattle are singer-songwriters, and they often need a producer, somebody who can, navigate all of the little things behind the curtain that they don't know how to do, like if they need to get a session player, or if even just like searching for a specific sound, I can like help them dial that in. So I do all that, and then we also do commercial video, like audio for commercial videos, and that's kind of like pretty normal for recording studios, that they'll be doing kind of lots of different audio work in addition to just recording bands, mostly because when you do work that is less here, I'm going to turn down my speakers a little bit because I think I'm getting a little feedback. One sec. When you do work that is, audio related, the more stuff that you can do just from your computer without having to show up and be on the clock, the more work you can generate, usually, just because you can get that stuff done a lot more efficiently, and it's not dependent on a specific time set that you've blocked off to work with an artist or something like that. And oftentimes, what you're providing can be more valuable if you're working for a client that allows you to charge more or anything like that. While most of the clients that we work with at the studio, they are kind of like budding artists or people that have some experience, have recorded an album or two in the past, or maybe they're working on their own album. They just want to come and record vocals or come and record drums. But the point is that our price point for that has to be kind of more reasonable, and at least like reasonably set to the expectations of our clients. And while if we're working with if we're doing some sort of work for thanks Lydia, there's the link there in the chat box. If we're doing work with some company that turns out lots of commercial videos and they get big budgets at the beginning of those projects, we can kind of charge what we want and be compensated accurately. So we do lots of different things, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I'm also a freelance video game composer, sound designer. That's one of the things that I studied in school. Audio engineering, I didn't actually study in school. That was mostly self-taught. But there was some of that involved with what I was doing in school. But for the most part in school, I was studying composition, a little bit of sound design, and kind of more like being a producer, running a session, getting everything ready, that sort of stuff. And as Lydia said, I do the current company that I'm working with is Bad Dream Games in Los Angeles. They're the creators of One Hand Clapping, which is an indie title. If you haven't heard of it, you can go check it out. It's a pretty cool game. It's a puzzle platformer that you sing to interact with objects in the world. It uses the microphone in your computer. So that's been a really interesting challenge because music is such a integral part of that whole experience. And you're also trying to encourage the player to participate by making music that is fun to interact with. And so that's been a really fun project to work on, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then I'm also a mixing engineer for a radio jingle production company called ReelWorld Productions. They're based out of Seattle here, but they also have a branch in the UK. And that's more like technical. It's almost like mastering. It's very like technical work, very small, minute differences, having to hear very small things. So that is kind of like my practice audio engineering. I feel like I improve a lot by working on those projects a lot. But it's also sort of like a kind of a bigger contract that I've taken on. So I kind of think of it that way. But I also feel, like I'm kind of an employee at the company as well. So it's kind of cool to have like coworkers that I can talk to about whatever I'm working on and everything. So, and I'll also discuss that aspect of working in the music industry, that there are jobs like that you can look for and apply for, just like how you would any other industry, any other traditional industry. So about me, I grew up in Seattle. I went to Berklee College of Music in the fall of 2013. And I took a year off to work as a freelance audio engineer, teacher, composer, performer, business owner, videographer, kind of you name it. I did a lot of different stuff during that year. I know that RIT does co-ops, I think. At least I don't know if that's required across the board, but Berklee doesn't require those. They kind of like nudge you to do an internship, but there's no like requirement or anything like that. And so that year off was sort of my self-imposed co-op to just kind of see what I could do in Seattle that was music related, but without having completed my education at Berklee. Just also mostly because, the first 2 years that I was in college, I just kind of tried to do everything. I was like putting myself into all sorts of different categories, and thinking that was probably the best way to get the most out of the school. But what I was finding was that I just was so stretched thin that it didn't feel like there was one thing I was getting particularly good at, or one thing that would make me an asset after school. And I also felt like I didn't have time to focus on what was after school because I was so busy with schoolwork. So part of that year was also figuring out how I could get from Berkeley what I needed to get from Berkeley in order to be able to be a professional musician after college, because that's a massive thing that's on the mind of anybody that is studying music, is what you do, afterwards. So after that year, I returned to Berkeley in the summer of 2016, and I decided to focus on film scoring and video game scoring, which is film scoring is a major at Berkeley and video game scoring is a minor. And I graduated in the summer of 2017. And then I moved back to Seattle. So what happened then? How do you choose where to move? When choosing where to move after college, well, obviously this is like in the same way that if you were college bound in high school, you start thinking about college, maybe as early as, your sophomore year, or maybe even earlier than that. I mean, I really wasn't thinking about college until the end of my junior year at the soonest. But, I assume, everybody has kind of a different path. But when you're in college, it's like that thing is replaced by where am I going to move after college instead of, where am I going to move after high school? And, I think that there are some things that I wish people had highlighted, and things that were told to me, I guess, and then things that I wish I had highlighted or had been highlighted to me when I was in college and thinking about where I wanted to move, because I was pretty mixed up about the whole thing. I was thinking, I should probably move to a music city, but then I was like, well, some of these cities aren't my favorite places, and then some of them are just really expensive, and there were it was kind of that situation that I'm sure lots of you are experiencing, where you can literally do anything. So it's like, how do you find the one thing that you want to do? So the three things that I kind of boiled down to when preparing this presentation were, where is there opportunity? Where is your network? And where will you be happy? And opportunity and network are kind of like, they're not the same, but they are tied together, because as you'll find, opportunity comes from your network. It's not so much like college where, if you are looking for something to do, or you're looking to find some information or something like that, you have resources that you can utilize to find those things. And they're all set out there in front of you. All you have to do is learn how to use them. When you get into the professional world, it's more, who do you know? And I heard that a lot when I was in college, and I didn't really understand what it meant until I started doing it regularly. And then you realize that, your network can be everything, especially in the music industry. Just because, you're working with people on things that matter a lot to them. And, they're things that some people hold very close, and, it's their creative, like, babies, and, they want the perfect, education for their children or whatever. And, I say or whatever as like a, and etc., not as like that's not important, because I feel similarly, I think anybody who's making art does. But anyways, those two things are tied together. Opportunity and network are pretty big. And obviously, you want to pick a place where there's going to be people there that, ideally, or at least, people that you can get to know there, if you're especially ambitious, at least socially ambitious, and then where's your opportunity as well? It's like, if you have a job offer, like right out of school, say you've been doing some co-op at a recording studio or wherever, depending on what it is that you're doing, you can, and they offer you a job right after school. Why would you not work, at least consider moving there? It's like, that's an opportunity. That's a huge thing, and a big reason to consider moving somewhere. But I think the third one that, like, nobody really said to me, and I think it needed to be said, was that you want to go somewhere where you're going to be happy, especially doing music. Just because, the whole reason that somebody decides to pursue something like music is because it makes them happy, because they can't stand the idea of, working a desk job, or they can't stand the idea of, doing something that isn't creative or whatever. And usually there's a lot of talent in line with that as well, where, they feel that they're contributing the most to the world by, doing music. So you want to be in a place where you feel at ease, so that you can be freed to do those things and not be burdened by just, hating the people around you, or being upset with the location, or being lonely or anything like that. So I think that's a really crucial thing to keep in mind.
Aaron, I have a question, and it's actually sort of a Rochester connected question.
Great. Yeah, go ahead.
So for music industry, do you find that people still have to be located in certain cities to do the work, or has technology sort of made it a geographically not critical thing?
Yeah, more of like an organic thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it depends what you want to do. I have been told that the way that Los Angeles tends to work, especially the music industry and the film industry, is that you don't get called for a job unless you live there. And I could see that being the case. That being said, I have, work that I do from Los Angeles, and, I hardly ever go down to Los Angeles. So I think it can go any way. It also kind of depends on what you want to do, though. Like if you want to work at a recording studio, for example, that's kind of a show up and work sort of job. So in that case, I think it would depend on where you find the opportunity to do that. But if you're just doing freelance work, there are ways to get connected. You could go, like, say, for example, you want to do video game music. You could go on to Gama Sutra. I don't know if I don't know who all is interested in video game music here, but Gama Sutra is like a blog site where you can read the people write articles about how games were made, or how like specific components of games were made. But there's also sort of like a networking aspect to it as well. And you can just find people that are making games and reach out to them and just say, I want to like work on your game. Like what can I, maybe you send them a demo of what you do or something like that. Another one is like, you can be working from your home and on, say you are looking for a project, either you've just finished one, or or you're looking for a new one for whatever reason. Go on to Kickstarter and find all the games that are being made on there. They all need music. All of them need music. Thanks for posting that Kama Sutra. That was something that I haven't really had to do, but is always like, something that if I have like extra time, and I want to take on a new project, that'd probably be the first place that I go to, just because you can go through and you can download their demo or whatever that video they have up on their website, and you can score it and just send it to them and just say, hey, I think we'd be a really good match working together. I just made this thing. Let me know if you're looking for a composer, or let me know if you're looking for a sound designer. So
yeah, and the reason that I asked the question is because, and I think you're getting to this where you talk about, you really didn't want to live in LA. Did you really want to go to Nash Vegas? Maybe not. Do you want to live outside of Detroit where there's these traditional music spots?
Yeah.
But then people who've lived in Rochester, and Mark, who's on the call, may actually know this. They know that just on the east side of Rochester, we have one of the top-end world-class recording studio setups that has had James Taylor and half a dozen other people come through it. They do all sorts of music recording. No one launching a music career would say, boom, Rochester. That's where I want to go.
Yeah.
Right? But it's here. And maybe because we have Eastman School. It may be, I don't know if it's connected to that, but it just seems sort of like there's, as you said, it depends on what you want to do. If you need to produce, this incredibly high level music stuff for recording, sure. But if you want to work in recording industry or work in recording engineering, there's opportunities in places that people might not think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's kind of the story of my career so far too, is that, I went to a place that wasn't necessarily, I mean, has been known for music for quite some time. There's always been a music scene in Seattle, but not in the sense of like, LA or Nashville is another one that's been, such a music town for so long that there's kind of avenues that are already set up so that you can navigate that infrastructure to find a way to make your career work. But you absolutely don't have to live in a specific place. And I feel like I'd be the first person to say that, also I see Mark, you posted in here what kind of work I do from my home for LA. It's the video game that I work on. The video game, the company is based out of Los Angeles. They have an office down there. And I'll talk about a little later in my presentation how I got connected with them and, and everything. And yeah. Oh, Wicked Squid Productions, for example. Many small studios. Oh, that's terrific. Yeah, and I think that's a really, crucial thing. And that's kind of what I was looking for in Seattle as well, is that every city has a music scene to some degree. It's ubiquitous. And you could absolutely make it work in Rochester. You could make it work anywhere you want to go. And I think that's kind of what I like, the message that if there is one big message that I can send across, it is that, if you don't want to move to the place that everyone else is moving, you don't have to. You can go somewhere else, try it somewhere else. And frankly, there's going to be a lot less competition in those places just because everybody's moving to LA or everybody's moving to Nashville or New York or Berlin or wherever. So, you can develop relationships with people and make your career work in these other places as well. And, you also hear about bands that come out of, St. Louis or Chicago's another one. I mean, there's like any major city has a music scene. And if you have the skills that you've learned in college to be able to help them, achieve what they want, that has monetary value, and you can absolutely charge for that, and you can develop a business out of it, and find a way to do what you love to do. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep rolling here. I chose Seattle for a number of reasons. I wanted to focus on the video games industry. Video games are huge in Seattle, and I also had this part of, I wanted to move where my family and friends were, which was in Seattle. All my friends from high school, I did music with people in throughout high school and everything. And then when I took a year off of school, that was all here as well. So despite the fact that a lot of my colleagues in the film scoring department at Berkeley were moving to Los Angeles, so that was a lot of my network as well. I figured that because my heart wasn't really in LA, I would go back to Seattle and try that first. And if I could make that work, then, I'd stay there. And my initial plan was really I'd go there and give it 6 months. And then, if it wasn't working out, I'd go somewhere else. But it just so happened that it worked out, So, and then, yeah, I didn't want to move to LA. I mean, everybody has different preferences, and it's important to listen to what your heart's saying, especially, if you're doing art, like, you're only doing it because you want to do it. You shouldn't feel like you have to compromise yourself. It's really important to listen to yourself because that makes great art too. You got to listen to what you have to say and stick to that. Don't try to be like everyone else, or don't try to, don't try to just emulate everybody just because you think that they're doing the right thing. I mean, I think it's good to make educated decisions, but, if your heart's really saying, I don't want to move to a big city, then don't move to the big city. Do your thing, Was I nervous about that? Yeah, I was nervous about it because I remember like my senior year, the film scoring program has like a directed study sort of like senior class, like sort of a, you know, like a end of the your time in school class. I'm sure RT has something similar where you have some sort of big project, and we would meet once a week to like watch a presenter give some presentation about kind of what I'm talking about here. And one of the presenters asked where everybody was moving, and they asked LA, and everybody but 3 people in the class raised their hands. And I was one of them, and I was moving to Seattle. There was also somebody who's moving to New York, and there was somebody who was moving to Austin, Texas. And you know, when you are in that situation and you're kind of figuring out what you want to do, it can be really hard to just be like, I know I'm making the right decision here, even though clearly there is a general consensus on what you do to pursue a career in music. So I kind of did feel nervous about that, but I did know that, you know, it was important to listen to what I felt. And so I gave that a lot of credit. And I also knew that the decision wasn't permanent. You know, I had all these friends that are moving to LA. If I moved to Seattle and it wasn't working out, I think I would have been more motivated to look into Los Angeles, you know. And I'm sure you all probably have similar things, you know, that, you know, you have your network at Rochester right now, and they're all going to go in different places. So no matter where you move, you're always going to have that network, and you're always going to have the friends that you made in college. And so keep that in mind. And I'll kind of like that ties back to what I'm going to talk about a little bit later as well. I'm reading Corey's comment here. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I think what you're talking about, Corey, is like important, that, you know, there's always going to be somebody who can do it a little bit better. Like maybe you're the person who can do it a little bit better. If you were dissatisfied with someone else, maybe that's a motivation for you to do it yourself. And I think it's important, you know, to know that you can always provide something that's, you know, I guess like that's been a lot of my work, is that, you know, like I'll get to know some people and they'll be dissatisfied working somewhere else, so they want to give me a try. And that's how you can build a business, because people are always looking for the best opportunity. So I think already doing what you're doing, you know, recording in studios or in people's basements or whatever, you know, that's exactly how you get started doing it, and also get an idea of how good you have to be to do it as well. So the first thing I did when I moved to Seattle is I took a moment, you know, because school's hard, and you deserve a break after you're finished. Take a moment and kind of like gather your bearings. Obviously, if you're in a more pressing situation, then you start doing what you're doing. But if you can afford it, you know, put some time aside, meditate a little bit, you know, play a video game, read a book, do you for a second, because you got your whole life ahead of you, you know. It's not every day that you finish college. So, yeah, I think it is important to do that. And then after that, once you're ready, start networking. I did my networking kind of in a way that was oriented towards video games, but then also became oriented towards getting to know musicians in Seattle. It all kind of happened organically, but I started out, and I was still doing. You can still do this stuff while you're in college too. Go to meetups. The video games industry has loads of meetups on meetups.com. If you guys haven't used that resource for finding things to do on a night when you don't have anything going on, definitely check it out. There's lots of stuff on there, especially if you want to get involved in video games. Game jams are another big one. I did one game jam. It was like a kind of a longer game jam in Vancouver, and I met some people there. I ended up not really doing like video game work in Seattle, like working with businesses in Seattle, but for all I know, the people that I met at that thing, you know, they're going to need an audio person 5 years from now or something like that. Or if I'm looking for more work, I can always go back to a game jam and get to know people that way. Just to clarify, a game jam is, you know, a bunch of people get together, a bunch of people usually don't know each other, or maybe some people know each other, but, you know, it's like just you sign up and you show up and you meet some people and you make a video game in 48 hours. And I would show up with, my computer and my interface and a microphone, and I'd kind of like go around and be the audio guy. And that's a great way to, get your name out there and get your name on some games as well, because some of those games are going to get put out just like online on itch.io or wherever. So it's a good way to kind of like build your resume if you're planning on getting into that industry. And then open mics are huge for me. I really can't emphasize that enough, and I'll get back to that. But reaching out to people, also sort of informational interviews, that's huge too. And you can start doing that now. There's no reason to not do that. That's like, reach out to alumni from RIT, or even just like cold email people. Find somebody that you look up to and you think what they're doing is cool. Shoot them an email and ask if you can, ask them some questions, and or like if they're in your area, see if you can buy them a cup of coffee, and be proactive about stuff like that, because you never know, like if you know how to do something, or you're or whatever, if sometime down the line they're going to need somebody who can do that, and then you're going to be the person that they know who can do it. Also, it's a great way to just like make friends. I mean, that seems really odd, but like I think it's important to think about networking as not just business. Networking is also a way that you make friends. Really, your network are your friends. And I think the more you blur those lines, the better the stronger your network is going to be, because your network has to be able to trust you in everything, and you have to be able to trust them in order for it to work. And who do you trust more than your friends? So I know there was one person that I reached out to. There were a number of people I reached out to in Seattle who I did informational interviews with when I graduated from college, but one of them in particular, he's now this like sort of pop star sort of thing. He goes by Mooselight Kingdom. You could check him out. But he's based out of China now. He still comes back to Seattle, but he was this guy who also went to Berkeley that I just reached out to, and we got a cup of coffee, and he was still kind of figuring things out at the time as well. And we kind of bonded over that and got to know each other. And, like you just never know who you're going to meet and who's going to become a friend, and especially when you're moving to a new city, it's important to find friends, because then, you're going to enjoy your presence in that city a lot more. Let me know if I'm going too fast. I'm kind of rushing along a little bit to kind of hit all these spots. I think it's also, so after you've been networking and like you're talking to somebody and they're like, hey, I have this opportunity. Are you interested in it? I think it's important to kind of monitor what it is that you want to do and make sure to take the opportunities that point you towards that direction. If you don't really know what you want to do, and all you know is you want to work in music and you haven't figured out the bits and pieces of that, then yeah, take whatever opportunities come your way. That's cool. But if you already know what you want to be and you know where you want to get to, it's important to take, the opportunities that align with that. And I think especially in music, that doesn't seem I think in most industries that's like, oh yeah, that's obvious. But in music, it really isn't, because, sometimes people just think music is music. But there's so many different facets of the music industry. If you want to like be a live sound person, you want to work in a recording studio, you want to, be a composer, do you want to like, be a teacher, do you want to, there's so many things that are tied into music, and it is important to pick the things that are going to be good for you. A big thing for me was when I took a year off school, and then during my time in between semesters in college, and then also earlier than that, just on and off, I taught a lot of guitar lessons, and that was sort of my summer job. And when I moved back to Seattle, once people found out that I was there, I got reached out to by, a handful of people saying, hey, are you still giving lessons? But I'd already decided that I didn't want that to be a part of what I was doing. I wanted my brand to be more production oriented, more creative oriented, more like, doing what I do now. And it was hard. It was hard to say no to those opportunities because they're basically like, here, like, let us pay you to, play guitar and, teach us how to do what you do, which is really fun, but I had already decided, no, I don't want to do that because I want to focus on what my brand's going to be. So yeah, everybody's going to have different things like that, but it's important to, kind of pick your path. And, also, if you, like I said, if you want to just stay open to things, try whatever you want. If you want to, if somebody is like, hey, can you write this piece for chorale, like a chorale ensemble, and you're like, I've never written for a chorus before, but sure, yeah, that sounds great. Then give it a shot. I know that, like, everybody's gonna have sort of different feelings about things like that, so it's just important to listen to what your heart's saying. So where do you find these opportunities? Well, in addition to your network, I mean, this is all kind of like tied together, but where do you like find your network? Where do these opportunities come from? The music industry, I think it's important to, you'll probably forget this if you're studying music in college, but music is really cool. Like, it's a really cool industry, and it's always been that. It's, it's a fun place. People are making music for people to come and celebrate, and you should embrace that it's going to be fun, that it's not going to be, a drag to like show up and be, all this stuff. You're doing it because it's going to be fun. And it might seem counterintuitive to do something fun, like go to a show, go see some bands play, if you're supposed to be networking, but that is exactly how you network in the music industry. You go to shows. If you hear about a house show from somebody, go to the house show. If you're, the type of person that's like, socially, you got to like hit some markers to make sure that you're doing the right stuff. Otherwise, you're just going to stay home and, just work on music on your laptop all night. Then, try to talk to one person, try to talk to 3 people, try to do whatever, you feel like you can. And eventually, if you just keep going to these things in a specific city, you're going to get to know, a lot of people that are also going. And once they find out that you know how to record, or you know how to, use auto-tune, or how to, do all this stuff that is just like such an abstract concept for so many musicians, then suddenly you got somebody you can work with. And, I put the slideshow, just making friends plus the music industry makes work. That's how you find work in the music industry, is you make friends who work in the music industry. My experience here, I've always been a songwriter. That's kind of like my motivating force within music. And it's also kind of like a hobby sort of thing as well. But the songwriting scene there isn't really much of that in Seattle right now. And I've also just found other opportunities that I've been happy doing. So, but I still write songs, and I was the kind of songwriter that wasn't really performing, so I didn't really do a whole lot during college, and I just would just keep writing these songs and not really do very much with them. So when I came back and I had some free time, I was just like, well, I'm going to start going to open mics and just see how that goes. And I had a lot of free time because I, was just out of college. I didn't have a job or anything like that. And so after a few months, I was just going to open mics like 3 to 5 nights a week, sometimes. And then on the off nights, I'd go to a show, and what you find is that if you just keep showing up, you're just going to get to know so many people. And you're also in a space. What's cool about open mics is that you're in a space where everybody's equally kind of being vulnerable. So, they're like, I remember one of my friends showed up to, this is when I was first getting to know them. They like came to my show, one of my shows. And afterwards we were talking, and they said, yeah, I feel like I know you so much better than you know me, just because I've heard all your songs. And I think that's true, that, that's an environment where everybody is sharing kind of their deepest, darkest secrets in front of a room full of strangers. And I think that breeds, incredible friendships, because you just get to know so much about a person right away, and you're being equally vulnerable, so they feel comfortable around you, So I did that. And then while I was doing that, the studio was starting to happen, kind of taking off a little bit. And my business partner offered, hey, if I want to bring in a band, feel free. So this was probably about 6 months after I had started helping out at the studio. I guess a little less than that, 4 or 5 months since I had started helping out at the studio. And they, I just went to an open mic, and I just found the people that I thought, the community looked up to the most, and that I thought were awesome, and all of that. And I offered, I think 3 different artists. I offered to do a free single for them at the studio, and 2 of them didn't respond. And then one of them did, and the one who did, was happy with the result, and he went and told everybody that he had a great time. And then next thing I knew, people were hitting me up to record. So, that's one way that you can kind of start your career. And I think the reason why the 2 people didn't respond, because I think that is a really interesting point. I think the reason why out of the 3 people that I reached out to, 2 didn't respond, is that they didn't know what to expect. I was this person that, was writing songs, whatever. And that was about the extent of what they knew about me, except for, we were friends, but so they knew I went to Berkeley, or they knew, that I'd studied music in college. But, their experience with just somebody saying hey, come record at my studio is usually they show up and it's somebody's basement, kind of like what Corey's talking about. And, some people are kind of intimidated by that. They don't want to just show up to somebody's basement and spend all day there recording, even as for free, So, if you can find a place to do your work, that's crucial. But, it's not crucial. But the point is that the standard is, people are just recording in their homes now, and they call it a studio. It's their garage, it's their basement, it's whatever. You can start by doing that. And, if you have anything more than that, then that's a trip for everybody that's working with you. So, it's kind of some way that might help you orient your goals. I know we're getting here pretty close, so I'm just going to keep cruising here. There are also jobs in the music industry that look more like regular jobs, which was kind of what I said in my intro. My job at the Jingle production company is basically a desk job. The only difference is my desk is here at home. I know you can't see this. I have speakers here, and I have my keyboard, and it looks just like a any music student's desk probably. And the only difference though is that I mix music at my job instead of doing whatever people normally do at desk jobs. And you can start looking for jobs like that now while you're in college, or whenever, if you're not currently in college, you can go online and start looking for jobs like that those jobs are around. There's also things like working for sample library companies. If you're really tech savvy, if you've been using Contact for years and you've been making your own sample libraries, and you're oh, I think that would be a fun, pay my bills sort of job. Then Native Instruments, I think, is always hiring for people like that. If you're also a composer and you're really savvy with sample libraries, you can also, make demos for those companies. They always need people to make demos using the samples that they're making so that they can, prove that they actually sound good. There's, broadcast audio jobs, that's a big one, working in radio. There are lots of jobs in the video games industry that are, again, usually contract jobs to begin with, but then if you really get into it, can become a salaried position, and you can really build a career in that. The jingle company, I work for them 3 to 5 days a week. It depends on, what they need me to do, but my standard is 3 days a week. So I have all these other days that I can focus on my freelance work. And I got this job through a friend of mine who was already working at the company, and somebody I still collaborate regularly with. So, keep your friends close. You just never know when somebody's gonna have an opportunity that they think that you're gonna be great for, And then also keep up your college connections. You never know where people are gonna go. I remember when I was entering into Berkeley in the first like like the freshman orientation or whatever, they said, the person who's like falling asleep in the back of the class could be the person who wins a Grammy. You just have no idea. You have no idea what people are going to go and do. You have no idea what people are good at. Maybe somebody's bad at school, but is an incredible songwriter or an incredible producer. And they just thought going to college would be the way to get there. And, maybe they drop out, maybe just, you don't hear from them for years and years. And then next thing you know, you see their name, being nominated for a Grammy or something like that. You have no idea where everybody's going to go. So keep your connections from college close, even the people that are not, in your major, find people that, like, I'm sure, there's a computer sciences program. If you're, some percentage of those people are going to go and make video games, and they're going to need an audio person. So keep your friends close. The opportunity to work on the video game came from when I was in the video game scoring program at Berkeley. I was in a class, had a sister class at the USC's game dev program, which was an awesome way to do a class. They were making games in their class, and we got assigned to their projects to write music and create sounds for them. The person that I worked with, one of the people I worked with, there was a team of 2 people, but one of them, he kept making the game. He got into a master class that was during his senior year, kind of like following the class that we had worked together in. And he started recruiting a team of people to kind of make a fuller version of the game. And he asked me to keep doing it, but I was a year older than him. So by the time I started working on it, I had already graduated. So for a whole year, I worked on this game pro bono. We completed the game. I'm sure they got a good grade on it. I don't know. I think they got a good grade on it. They released it on Itch.io, which is a free like indie game distribution website. And out of a stroke of luck, game went viral. Has since been downloaded over 400,000 times. That was just the demo. And then after another year of searching, the lead developer and the lead designer secured a publishing deal, and I was offered the position of sound designer and composer again, this time with pay. So you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen, what people are going to go off and do. So it's just important to, to treat everybody equally and just be a good person. And you never know how that's going to come back to you. That shouldn't be the reason that you treat people well. Obviously you should just treat people well, because people are good people. And you want to be a good person too, ideally. But this isn't an ethics presentation though, so hopefully you're figuring that out on your own. But the point is that, you do creative things with your friends, and the more you embrace that, the more fun your career is going to be, and probably the more fruitful your career is going to be. So just keep that in mind. It's not all business. It's good to have the business nailed down, but it's not all business. You want to be a good hang too. And so I guess I'll do my summary here, and then I'm just about done. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If not, it's all good. I put my email on this last slide, so if anything comes to anybody afterwards, feel free to email me. So when choosing where to go, you want to consider opportunity, your network, and happiness. Everybody's going to have a different balance of those 3, but like for me, I think the happiness thing was really crucial. I wanted to prioritize that, and but the other 2 were important as well. So you just find your own balance. Some people, they're just like, I don't care. I don't need to. I can eat cup of noodles every night for years on end, and I'm gonna starve, but I'm gonna go and like make it big, and that's gonna be my motivation to keep going. And I'm not that way. I feel like I gotta have some sort of work-life balance, but listen to yourself and do what you think is gonna be right for you. Follow your instincts when choosing where to go. It's okay to be nervous. Everybody else is. Just go somewhere else if you don't like it. Just like but you got to try something, so just go and give it a shot. And then if it doesn't work, pick a new place. It's all good. Once you're there, go out and meet people. Don't just get an apartment and then stay in it and just hope that you meet people. Go to a bar, go to meetups, go to shows, go do fun things, and you're gonna inevitably meet people that are gonna help with your network. And another thing I was gonna mention about open mics was that you don't have to go to, like, every city has loads of open mics. Seattle in particular has tons of them right now, and it can be intimidating because it could be something that you're like, well, which ones do I go to, or should I just go to all of them? But then that's like every night of my week, and what I would say is that if you want to start going to an open mic, pick one and go to it every week for like 6 months. If you do that, you're going to get to know everybody who comes through that open mic. They're going to tell you about all the other open mics, which ones are better, which ones are worse. It's the same thing as going to shows. You like talk to somebody after their band plays, and you're like, yeah, I just love your sound, blah, blah, blah. They'll be like, oh, you should also check out this band. Check out this band. Have you been to this venue? We're playing a show here. You have to go out to like find out where all the cool stuff's happening. And then these people find out the skills that you have, and you generate work that way. Take the opportunities you feel you'll excel at. That's important too. Don't like, if you hate wind ensemble music, you can't stand wind ensemble music because of some traumatic experience, in high school band where they played the soundtrack to Pirates of the Caribbean 1,000 times and you just can't stand the sound of a clarinet anymore. Don't take a wind ensemble gig. Take gigs that are going to align with what you want and are going to make you happy. Because the last thing you want is to be working full-time in music and be miserable, and then wanting some other job. You want it to work. You want it to be something that you really like. And then where do you find opportunities? Open mics, shows, your network. Those are your friends. Job listings, just like any other job. There are job listings out there. You can absolutely start there. And then the relationships you built in college. Those are gonna carry out. And that ripple is gonna just keep growing as everybody keeps doing more and more things. So, and especially right when you graduate from college, because you're fresh. Everybody's fresh in each other's minds. Right when you graduate from college, and so in the years following that, just keep in touch with people, and once you're living in a different place from them, it's on you to keep in touch with them. You gotta just call them up, be like, hey, how's it going? Just be a good friend, be there for people, and it'll all work out. Cool. Yeah, John, that's right. Community theater sound designers is massive. That is a thing. In New York, that's a big thing. And yeah, I guess in DC, I didn't realize how fruitful the scene is in Washington DC, but yeah, I mean, any major city is going to have opportunities like that. And that's the thing about the music industry. You just never know. There's so many things that you just don't think about. There's so many people in that industry, and there's a lot of money being sent around. Find your way to participate, and you'll get paid for it. You just gotta work your way up to it. So yeah, that's
great.
my presentation.
Thanks so much, Aaron. And I will add one more thing to your list that's not on there, which a couple people may have seen here during this webinar. We have 2 alumni on the webinar who are working professionally in entertainment technology, music industry work, and the RIT alumni connections can certainly help. So if someone is interested in what's happening in music in a particular city that you're interested in moving to, certainly don't hesitate to contact the folks in our alumni relations office, because they can connect you with people working in that city, and you can make some immediate professional contacts just because of your RIT status. So that's a really good idea. So that is going to wrap us up. That's about all the time that we have. If you do have additional questions, Aaron has given his email, and you're welcome to contact him. You can also email questions to tigerwebinars@rit.edu, and we will direct your questions to Aaron. All participants will receive an email from us in about a week with a link to today's webinar recording. Thanks to Aaron for sharing your knowledge and passion with our alumni and students today. We want to remind all of our Tiger alumni that your gifts to RIT are helping today's students achieve their dreams and also raising RIT's national reputation. If you have not yet made your annual gift to the Fund for RIT, please visit rit.edu/make-a-gift and select an area of the university that matters to you. And please join us on Wednesday, February 26th for our next Tiger webinar, Maximize the Power of Your Data to Tell Your Story. We will hear from alumna Joanne Ryan, co-founder and chief community engagement officer at Continual Care Solutions, a Rochester-based software company. Joanne will be sharing ways to make your data work for you, not against you. Thank you again for joining us today. Please exit the webinar by simply closing your live storm window. And please let us know what you thought of the webinar through a brief survey that you will receive via email. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.